unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What is up, everybody? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm here with my co-host Ian Gibson. How are you, Ian?
Hey, I'm doing good. Crazy days bowl games, man. I mean, Pop-Tart Bowl, when that's like the most normal game, you know you're having an insane season.
Yeah, I mean, that game wasn't even necessarily normal because there was a lot of intrigue into that game. But so what we're going to do, since this is obviously a little bit different than the normal schedule of how these shows go, because we have playoff games and we have bowl games going on at the same time. So what we'll do is we're just going to do two recaps of two of the teams that we covered as far as bowl games, and then we'll jump into the preview of the quarterfinals that are going to be on Tuesday and Wednesday. Right? Is it Tuesday and Wednesday?
New Year's Eve and New Year's Day.
New Year's Eve is Tuesday, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. So let's jump into the games we cover. We'll jump into USF first. It looked like USF was going to basically blow out San Jose State once they went up 21-7. They had that long kickoff return. And I thought, okay, this looks like, they're doing their thing. They were moving the ball pretty well and they were getting stops. And then all of a sudden, just San Jose State just came back and made it a game. And then San Jose State went up and it was like, oh crap, like USF's going to lose this game. And, the scenario where Golish had the decision of punting the ball back to them with very little time left was a tough decision, because it's like, if you punt the ball there, you may not get the ball back and the game's going to be over. So you have to rely on the fact that your defense can get a stop here. And they did. And they got the ball with 50 seconds left or whatever. They got down the field, got into field goal position. And then Cannon, he ends up transferring after the game. But credit to him, because he made the kick when we needed him. And, it barely went in because it goes off the goalpost and goes in, but goes to overtime. We go back and forth for quite a bit because, the overtime is now kind of ridiculous. And we do get to the 2-point conversion part of overtime. And USF gets to the fifth overtime, gets their conversion, and then stops San Jose State. And it was at the time, it's ridiculous to say that, but at the time, the longest bowl game ever. And then 3 days later, I don't know what game it was, but it was 3 days later, there was a game that was longer. I think it went to 6 overtimes. But, huge win because, I know people are disappointed with this year. And it was a bit of a disappointment because I think we thought that they could go probably 8-4 with this schedule. It seemed likely that they could go 8-4, considering that they played Miami and Alabama. But no, I think USF made the most of it, considering that Byron Brown was out in 2/3 of the year. So they struggled with Archie. I know that they have lost Izzy Carter, and he's gone. He transferred out. But I think, from the looks of it, it looks like Byram is back for next year, because I think if he would have left, he would have already made plans to leave and would have mentioned that. I think he's pretty much locked in for next year. And, as much as it was a struggle, it could be a blessing, because one, Golish was really hot after last year. The groundswell was if he had another really good year, if they went 10-2 this year, he may have left. It may be, a good thing that they didn't have as much success this year, because it at least extends his tenure at USF at least another year. So, and honestly, the good thing is the closer we get to the stadium being built, the higher likelihood that Golish does stay. So, like, I don't know. I mean, at this point, it's I think you have to look at this season with like a grain of salt and just be like, it could have been a lot worse. They beat the teams that they needed to beat. They lost to better teams. They lost to Memphis. They lost to Tulane. They lost to Navy. They lost to Miami. They lost to Alabama. But the loss to Rice was probably the worst loss. I think that was the only one that I think everyone was really pissed off about. It was the last game of the year and no one was in the stadium and like whatever. And it's like kind of going through the motions at that point. But still, that game was very disappointing. But again, they came back and they win this game. They traveled 4,000 miles or whatever it was to get to Hawaii. And, they won the game. And now they got to win over a non-losing team. So a team with a winning record. It's the first time, I think, since Golish has been there that they've done that. And first time since, like, I can't even remember when. It's probably like 5 or 6 years since that has been a thing. So, I think with the recruiting classes they're getting, they've been like the best recruiting G5 team the last 2 years. They're putting in the infrastructure to really build a really good team. And, you see it with Florida. It's a very similar trajectory where the first 2 years didn't look that great. And even for Florida, this beginning of this third year was a rough start. But at the end of it, they really started to shine. And I really think that the depth that they had built and the player roster, which USF is doing, really started to like show through. Because, man, I know that there was some talent on the team when Jeff Scott was here, but considering how bad that Charlie Strong had built the team and then Jeff Scott really didn't do much as well, it really put the program in a huge deficit as far as depth pieces, backup pieces to really make a difference. Because, yeah, there are players, the starters are good, but like once you get past the starters, it's like guys that are just not very quality players. And, it makes a difference when you're playing good teams like Tulane and Memphis and Miami and Alabama. You're not going to be able to withstand it. I mean, in that Alabama game, it was clear, they got to the fourth quarter and they just fell apart. And I don't know. I'm excited for the future. Like, I think if anyone had told us while we were going through the Jeff Scott experience that we would get 2 7 and 6 years right in a row, I think everyone would have taken that. Like 2 bowl victories, like Miami has had 1 bowl victory in the last like 15 years. FSU went 2-10. Like, you got to take UCF is like 4-8 or whatever. So like, you've got to take with what they have and appreciate what it is. And I know you like can't just say, oh, you can't complain, but it's like, I don't know. Some of the USF fans on Twitter are just over the top with it. And it's like, man, do you realize how far of a deficit that we were at to begin with to get now to where it's like, okay, this, like, honestly, next year, considering the schedule, what we have in front of us, it seems it's setting up very well for them to take a nice run. And I know there's still a tough game against Miami and some other games are going to be tough, but they should be able to be there. And if Byram's 100%, which he's been off for like a couple months anyways, and like he should be fully healthy. God, he should be ready to go by spring, I would hope. And even if not, he's probably ready by summer camp. So, the future's bright. I know it's a rough loss, that Rice game, but still getting 7 wins is huge. And, his 14 wins compared to Jeff Scott's, I think like 3 or 4, looks like amazing in comparison. So I think you have to like take everything in context and not just scream about this 1 year. But your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, this game, best way to describe it was like a Christmas miracle because it was on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
The USF, they were up 21-10, and then they just were, really not into it in the second half, and just flat out they got outplayed. They flat out got outplayed in the second half, and they kept keeping San Jose State in the game. And then they were down. And then they're like, oh, shoot, we got to like come back and try to, rally to make a game out of this. Credit to that. I mean, it was a gutsy decision to punt and rely on the defense, but the defense at least did its part in holding San Jose State when it mattered, which was key. But the offense was really sputtering. It did not have that same synergy it did in the first half, and that really, really hurt them because I said that game, there was about 6 times USF could have ended that game and put it away, especially in overtime, and they didn't. But not going to repeat everything you said, because everything I've thought about USF is in line with you. It's just good win. Again, it's kind of like it's moving up, but maybe not like the skyrocket trajectory that we were expecting or were hoping for more. They still went 7-6, back-to-back bowl wins. First time that's happened since Quentin Flowers and Marlon Mack were at USF in 2015 and 16. So there is progress still being made. Now, like I said, this season, you're going to have to start beating teams that, if you want to enter that, upper echelon of the American Conference, you're going to have to start beating teams like Tulane, Memphis, these good teams. To really, leapfrog them and be one of the toughest teams in the group of 5, which is what USF is trying to be. They got a ways to go, but the foundation is there. They just need to act on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a recency bias with like how we view things. I mean, we do that with everything. Like everybody does it. We're all guilty of like being like, oh, well, this is the best thing now. Like, especially with like movies and like different TV shows and stuff. We're like, oh, it's the greatest show of all time. And it's like, oh, if you actually like look at it from like a 14,000 feet view, you're like, oh, well, these things are why they are, and like whatever, this is better, and like I don't know. It's just it's one of those things that we're so like caught up in the moment on things, and I think if we just take a step back, us as fans, that we'll realize that there is a lot of progress here. Alex Golesh has completely changed. I remember him saying, I don't know if it was like the middle of last year, where he was talking about how guys didn't even know how to celebrate because they didn't win that much over those 3 years. So like they didn't even know how to like act. And he's like, they had to like tell them how to celebrate. And I'm like, God, that just to a T like points out like, it's just ridiculous. Actually, now looking at their out of conference schedule. Did you see this for 25? I think I remembered this, but I totally forgot. I knew that they were playing Florida and Miami. Yep. But guess who they're also playing? Boise State.
Oh boy.
I mean, at least that game's at home, but man, that is a tough game.
Yeah, and I think that's the first game of the year.
Yeah. Yikes. Oof. God, I hope they're ready for that. I don't know if they're going to be. But, Genty's going to be gone, so I don't know how good Boise's going to be next year, because they're going to have to, like, kind of change their makeup a little bit. But their quarterback is pretty good for Boise State, and I think he's back. But Dirk Cutter is their offensive coordinator, and you remember him with the Bucks. Like, he's really good. So, like, I expect them to still be good offensively next year. So the defense, that honestly – out of everything with USF, I think they just need to really focus on getting the defense better, because like that is something where if you notice, like, and I try to mirror it as much as I can with like my like expectations of USF with Tennessee, because like Tennessee, the way that they've like incorporated a good defense with their offense has been kind of important, because their defense is stout. Like Tennessee's defense is one of the best defenses in the country. They didn't play great against Ohio State, but I think that was largely to do with the offense just struggling mightily. I think if the offense had just been kind of like decent in that game, not even great, just decent, that they would have like been able to get off the field and make more stops. And because Tennessee was like, basically punting to them almost every other couple of plays instead of having long drives. They were just like boop, punt quick, and the defense was out to dry because of that. But I just feel like if the defense can take another step, that this team might be able to get to that next level. And I think that's the one big thing that's holding them back. And I think going forward, I think that if they can focus on that, I know Todd Orlando's been there now a couple of years. It seemed to be better at points this year. But again, we need to see it against big time opponents. So let's move on to USC real quick. I watched the first half of this game, and then I didn't get to watch the second half, which I wish I would have, because the second half was the better part of this game because it exploded for was it not 28 but 24.
SC scored like 28 and
SC scored 28 and
A&M scored
24. So yeah, ton of points in the second half. And Maeva, 3 interceptions again. I mean, he's been very not great at ball security. So he needs to be better with that. He needs to take care of the ball better. But he did have 4 touchdowns, and he had 295 yards. Marcel Reed for A&M had a pretty good game as well. I don't know what to make of this USC team because, again, this was another one-score game. They have just put themselves in this position all year long, literally from beginning to end. They were in Vegas the first game. They're in Vegas the last game. And, throughout the whole season, it was nothing but one-score games. And, they survived 4 of them, but they lost a good amount of them. So it's you got to get to the point where you're not in this position where you can at least have a 2-score cushion to I don't know. It's just they've kind of just played down the competition in some of these games. And then they've also just I don't know, offense has been a struggle at points. And then defense, I think, has done tremendous. I think that has been the bright spot of the whole year, is that the fact that the defense has done so well. They had a lot of guys that were transferred out, so they didn't have their full squad throughout the year. But Jacoby Lane, receiver, had a really good game, 127 yards, 3 TDs. Kyle Ford had that touchdown at the end. It was 8 seconds left, and they won it. Just a kind of crazy game. I wish I had watched this because, USC was losing 24-7, and then, put it on them. A&M came back, went ahead. Just a great game. I don't even know why I didn't even record it. It's the holidays, so there's a million things going on. So, but great season for them as far as bouncing back at the end after the benching of Miller Moss. So I think, Miller Moss might have been the problem there because he was throwing a lot of interceptions as well. But Maeva, the great thing about him is the fact that he is more mobile and more active in the run game. So that is more conducive to what Lincoln Riley tries to do with his offense. So hopefully, Maeva into next year is the piece that they need, and they can focus on him. They can, put him through spring and summer camp, and we'll see him come through into the fall. It's another hard schedule because the Big Ten is a really difficult schedule, plus Notre Dame. So, buckle up, USC. It's going to be another tough year. But if Maeva does make the jump into next year, maybe we'll see a jump for USC as well. Your thoughts on this, Ian?
Yeah, so this was the equivalent of an arena football game in Vegas. And I'm kind of the opinion that USC just needs to play in Vegas right now because 2 of their wins were obviously against LSU and A&M, both in very similar, burnout fashions. A&M, it's really tough because they had a 17-point lead And to have that slip away, you just can't do that, especially with a team like SC, where as good as they were on defense, if you have them at 17 and with Maeva throwing 3 interceptions, you should have them in that game. And they just couldn't. They dominated time of possession. They forced more turnovers and they still let that game slip away. That's where you can see talent winning over everything else. So I think with that one, this bowl game was really more like SC was just more talented, had more athletes than A&M right now to really stop them. There was more speed over skill at that point. And Maeva, like you said, there's a lot of potential here. Kind of the same thing we said about Miller Moss last year in his bowl game performance. So we're getting some serious parallels here. But I would say, all in all, it's a good way to end the season for SC. It's a tough one for A&M because they had that game won and they just could not get a stop when it counted. But anyways, SC still finishes with a winning record to end the year.
Yeah, and it's definitely to now. It seemed like I think there were all the teams that we covered at one point were 4-5. So for them to go 7-6, to go 3-1 to finish off the year, and that one honestly was against Notre Dame, and they were in that game almost to the very end. They had those like 2 pick sixes. If they didn't throw those pick sixes, the game's probably a lot closer. So, it wasn't that far off for USC to be not only 7-6, but maybe even 8-5, and with a win against Notre Dame, which would have been huge because that would have knocked Notre Dame out of the playoff picture. So let's move on to the playoff.
Well, it's their offense that needs to play better. And they showed how good they can be against Tennessee. Now they got to do it again against an even bigger and tougher opponent again at Oregon. So I feel like with this one, I'm going to take the Buckeyes because I feel like that defense is going to find a way to get enough stops, and they're not going to waste an opportunity to, drive Oregon into the ground like they did last time. I'm going to take Ohio State winning a close one. I'll go with let's go 34-31 win for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the stats now, and it's really, really close, both of these teams. So the only difference I'm really seeing is red zone scoring for these defenses, which Oregon is 95th and Ohio State is first. And you saw that in the Michigan game. Ohio State, was able to stop Michigan close, and they've done it all year. They've been really great at red zone defense. And the only other difference, because they're the same in red zone offensive scoring, they're both 50th. And then, their stats are very similar, like as far as everything else. The only other thing I will say is that Will Howard is more turnover prone. He's thrown more interceptions. They're 51st in the country in throwing interceptions. And I think that actually, as far as, Ohio State might be able to stop them in the red zone. And then the thing that might go in favor for Oregon is that Will Howard might throw an interception or two to make the difference here in the game. So I'm with you. This is very close. Like these teams, I wish this was a semifinal game, and it sucks that we get this in a quarterfinal. But it's just the way the playoff breaks. I think Oregon is still the best team in the country. I really feel like that. I like Ohio State a ton. They have a ton of talent. Jeremiah Smith is a freak. He is the best freshman wide receiver I think we may have ever seen. And Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson are amazing 1-2 punch in the backfield for Ohio State. Oregon has a bevy of playmakers. Johnson, Stewart, Dylan Gabriel is amazing. Their defense really solid. I think if all being equal, I think the difference, I think it's going to be Howard's turnovers. I really think it. Like looking at the stats and looking what can be the narrative here, I think that Oregon is good enough to be able to force some turnovers, but they're 83rd at takeaways. So maybe they are not good enough to be able to force the turnovers there, even though Will Howard could provide them. The other thing, real quick on that, sack percentage, they're both very strong, both defenses, but Ohio State is second best in the country. So, God, I don't know what to think. I want to pick Oregon. I really do. Like, I think Ohio State can win, but I feel like Oregon is just a better team. And with having that time off, maybe they're well rested. God, yeah, I'm going to say Oregon, and barely. I'm going to say like it's going to be just like the first game. It could be very similar outcome. I'm going to say like a 32-31, and, Oregon barely wins. Okay, last game we have is the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. Notre Dame going up against Georgia of a rematch of 1980, right?
Oh, yeah. Is it?
Wasn't that the championship game? The one that Herschel Walker won as a freshman, right?
Yeah. Was that against Notre Dame?
It was either Notre Dame or Penn State. I can't remember. I think it was Notre Dame. But regardless, let's jump into it. So give me your thoughts, and then I'll go after you.
Yeah. First of all, yeah, you're correct. It was Georgia versus Notre Dame. So this one again for Georgia, we know they're not going to have Carson back. But honestly, let's be real here. It's not that big of a loss because the offense still, the bread and butter is, the running game, how well the tight ends play there. So with the loss of Begg, it's not going to hurt them as much as, say, another, losing a quarterback would be to another team. Notre Dame still riding high. They had a, good win against Indiana, and they did a great job defensively stopping that attack, that passing attack. I feel like in this one, Georgia, that running game is something that Notre Dame is going to have to find a way to stop because they have so many weapons on the run, and then they can hit you with that play action pass. The big thing will be is how well Notre Dame reacts to that play action pass. If they're biting on those plays and they have guys open 15, 20 yards down the field, this is Georgia's ball game, and they are well within range. For Notre Dame, in order to prevent that, they're going to have to, get Georgia off the field. They're going to have to limit the run or at least force them to throw the ball. And even then, it's not a guarantee. I feel like there's not enough on offense for Notre Dame to come over this, Georgia defense. And, I mean, this defense, again, they somehow gave up over 30 in the regulation against Georgia Tech, but was able to hold Texas to, 19? So I don't know. It's been a crazy year this year. But if history repeats itself, I feel like Georgia will have this one in hand. Defense finds a way to stop Riley Leonard and that attack of Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's defense just can't get Georgia off the field. They'll just, grind their way to scoring and wear them out in the second half. I'm going to go Bulldogs winning. I'll go with a 27-17 win for Georgia.
What was your final score again? Say it again.
27-17 Bulldogs. Hope I'm wrong.
I don't know. With this Georgia team, the defense is not as good as years past. So that's the one thing. And then two, they, with Carson Beck, they were very turnover prone. They're 84th in the country in turnovers or in interceptions. Red zone scoring, they're 10th in the country, which is really good, and scoring overall 31st, so really good. Notre Dame is the second best scoring team in the country. And, when I was looking at the stats, it was the list that I would go through was the top scoring teams in the country. And the worst team in the entire playoff, I believe, was Georgia as far as scoring. And I think that a lot has to do that with the fact that they played a harder schedule for the first time in years, that they finally have had a really difficult schedule to deal with when they added Ole Miss and Alabama, and they lost to both of those guys. And they played Texas too, so that was a tough one too. But they got lucky in that Texas game because Texas imploded in that first half. And if Texas doesn't implode, Texas may win that game. So, and Texas was destroying them in the SEC championship game. They just couldn't capitalize on their chances inside the red zone. But Georgia's red zone scoring on defense is not that great. It's 54th. They don't create that many turnovers. Their turnover margin is not very good. It's 61st. It's basically zero. I don't know. I don't like this Georgia team a lot. Notre Dame, fourth best in the country in getting interceptions on defense. I think they can force Gunnar Stockton into some mistakes. He got lucky in that Texas game. They survived. But I don't think that's going to continue. I think this Notre Dame team is better than this Georgia team right now. Like I think if there was a healthy Carson Beck, I would give them more of a shot. I know he had been more turnover prone, but just because of the fact that he had been experienced would have given them a better chance. I think with Gunnar Stockton, a kid that has not played more than I think it's 60 snaps all year, his whole career. He hasn't played much at all. So to expect this kid to just jump into a playoff game and to just be, ready to go, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that Notre Dame's going to win this game. I like Jeremiah Love a lot. I'm looking at his injury update, and I think he's good to go. I know that Notre Dame lost a defensive lineman. I can't remember his name, but he was pretty integral to their defense. But their defense is stout, man. Third best in defensive scoring, 7th and 10th best in third and fourth down conversions on defense, third best in passing defense. But the one thing that they're a little weak on is rushing defense. There's 36. They allow 133 yards a game. So maybe Georgia can get them there. I don't know. I just don't think Georgia is good enough this year. I know people are enamored with Georgia in years past, but this is not the same Georgia. There are not a ton of playmakers on this offense outside of maybe ETN. The rest of them are good, but not great. And again, if you don't have a guy good enough to be able to get them the ball, then you're lacking there. So I think Notre Dame's defense is good enough to stop Georgia's offense, and I think Notre Dame's offense is adequate enough, and obviously scoring wise they can, and I think they can put numbers on Georgia here. So I'm going to go with Notre Dame winning a 28-20 game. Yeah. Well, that's it, everyone. That is our preview show of the quarterfinals. I just wanted to say this has been a tremendous 2024. When we got into the beginning of this year, I'm almost positive we were around 100 subscribers. We are now, as of today, over 1,800 subscribers. So I just want to thank all of you, on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, Twitter, on TikTok. Thank you for all of your support. We really do appreciate it. We have, this is a labor of love. We don't make money as of right now on this. So we're trying to get sponsors hopefully into next year to make some money to be able to help make this even better. We do the research, Ian, and I haven't told you this yet, Ian, but I came up with your nickname. I got it for it because your last name's Gibson. So I'm going to go G5 Gibson. G5 guy Gibson. So I've
been given worse names.
No, but it's perfect because that's
it is.
Because it's I don't think that other national college football brands, media, whatever, talk about the G5 the way that we do. And it's the fact that you know those teams better than anybody. Like, you really are the most knowledgeable person. Dude, I watch a ton of different college football stuff, and I know you do as well. And like, you know more than any other person that I have seen in any other form of media. And that goes a long way to show that we are well versed in our research and that we really work hard at this stuff. And, I hope that you folks out there that are watching this, know that. And we are passionate about this sport. And yes, we do cover, USF and Florida and USC and UCLA, but we are a national show. Like, we do cover these national stories and try to cover the big games every week. And I think we do a really good job of that. And, we like on our recaps, like, I do like minimum like 5 to 6 hours every Saturday or Sunday before I do the show. And so, like, when these recap shows go on, I do a ton of work to be able to watch, 18 to 20-minute condensed games of these games. And, we put in the effort so that you guys can hear our knowledge and get a full understanding of what the sport is. And I've been doing this a long time now. It's been since 2016. And, I love this. I really do. This has been something that I've loved to be able to do each year. And I am extremely grateful that Ian is a part of this as well, because he brings such immense research and knowledge of the sport. Considering Ian's only, how old are you?
23.
23, and he knows more college football history than, like, I'd say 90% of college football fans. And it is, it's a tremendous asset that we have at Hater Radio here. And I just want to thank all of you. Please like, subscribe, comment, follow, do all the things, share on all the formats that we said. Ian, what are your socials before we go?
Yeah, it's at Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. It's at G_Gator_G.
That's the show, everyone. Happy New Year. We'll talk to you on, oh shoot. Let me see what the schedule is. I forgot. It's not normally what we've been doing. It's a little bit different. So there'll be a show Thursday. No show Wednesday because there's games on Wednesday. We'll do a show Thursday, probably same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So happy New Year, y'all, and enjoy these games, and we'll talk to you then. Take care.